welcome back to Financially Incorrect. I am your host, Barak, and this, again, is a podcast sponsored by FX Pesa. Today, I have a special guest. His name is Tony Makau. He's a friend.
Hello.
And he is the managing director of Gelian Investment Ltd. I hope I've said that right.
Yes, correct.
And they're in hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
They're in borehole drilling.
Yes.
They have a school.
Correct.
Have I missed? I feel like I've missed one.
No, there's clearing and forwarding.
Oh,
but those
clear,
are the main
yes,
ones.
clearing and forwarding
Yes.
as well, and among other investments. So he's the managing director of Gelian Investment, and we have him here today to tell us his money journey.
Yes.
And hopefully we can learn a thing or two, and I can have as many investments as you do in like the next couple of years.
Thank
so
you.
I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You've done a very good job of introducing me.
Yeah.
I'm just a simple guy.
Yeah.
I've managed to find myself in a portfolio of companies. Maybe we can start with my journey.
Yeah,
And
we'll start with your journey. First of all, I see that you have 3 degrees.
Correct.
One undergrad and 2 master's degrees.
Correct.
Undergrad from the University of Liverpool.
Correct.
And then master's from an MSc from Warwick.
Yes.
And then MBA from USIU.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Why so much school?
Aha. This is a good question. The undergrad was obvious. I wanted further learning.
Yeah.
So I started with international business. I've always had a dream to go to Warwick. Warwick was one of the biggest challenges. It was top 5 universities in the UK. So I figured my next master's had to be in Warwick.
Okay.
So I applied for business analytics and consulting, which is pretty much spreadsheet management. It's a lot of analysis and a lot of... so when I did my journey from the UK back to Tanzania, and I found myself working for a bank here, one of the top 4 banks, I had a lot of spare time. I had that discussion as well with my father, and he felt that too much idle time is a waste. I might as well do something that's progressive. I figured the next best step would be an MBA. So all consistently through my life, it's always been about business management, business analytics, and then finally the MBA.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's how you essentially get to your 3 degrees.
Yes.
From let's start, I guess, now with a money journey.
Yes.
Right. So, and it's a question I guess we've asked all our guests. When do you first become conscious that money is a currency and money is a thing that makes the world go round? How old were you? And you can be as young as you'd want to go.
Yes.
When you first have your conscious thought around that.
In fact, you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
I started my journey from a very young age. And it was actually with my grandfather. He was always very cautious about money and saving. And from such an early age, he would give you something, some small pocket monies here and there. Next time, he'd also ask you, how much do you have? So you build up that savings courage. Another part of my money journey, which I discovered a lot later on, was the entrepreneurial side, where there's an element of risk taking. And having folks who've dabbled here and there helps you realize that it is okay to take that risk.
Yeah.
It is okay to actually spend that money, but on things that matter. Discovering the losses in terms of that risk came a bit later on, where you realize not everything works. The partners that you go into with business matter a lot more than anything else. And with business, it's a risk. There's a win, there's a loss. So you have to be able to accept both sides of the coin. Yeah. I think that's my bit of the money journey.
Do you have a conscious memory where you then sort of understand that money is important and money allows you to do things?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's also a very good question. I think traveling abroad, studying abroad also gives you a lot of exposure in terms of what money can do, in terms of that exposure, being able to travel, being able to buy unique things, being able to buy clothes, being able to buy new accessories, gadgets. It gives you that freedom in terms of this is what money can do. On the other end, it also becomes very destructive if you become too much into leisure. Unless you're saving, you realize that, hey, this can become destructive because it's your livelihood.
Yeah.
It's what essentially allows you to live, thrive. It also brings you joy to some certain extent.
Yeah.
So I think so. And having done the degrees, especially in analytics and consulting, it's helped me to understand the business side of money, how to manage your cash flows, how to read your financial statements, and how much of an impact that makes to the success of a business.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, for me, I think my when I first understood that money was a thing, I was in, I think, class 2, I think, in school, and we used to have this pouch in the house that had foreign currency in coins.
Yes.
I think it was something that my parents were storing up, and I remember because we used to carry break to school, right? We never bought stuff from the tax shop.
Yes.
So someday I go and I take a couple of coins from this pouch because I realize people are going to this tax shop and they're paying and they're getting stuff. So I go with all these coins.
Yes.
And I go and I say I want mandazis and whatever it is. And the lady's like, cool, and she packs up for me. And I then give her the coins.
Yes.
I didn't understand that, one, they were a different currency for starters, and that in terms of trading value had 0.
Yeah.
So I remember she took the coins and was so upset.
Yeah.
She threw the coins back at me. And I think like for me, consciously, that's when I think as a child I was like, you know what, okay, so it may not have been conscious at the time,
but
now I think about it and I was like, that's the first time that I probably can trace me understanding that there's different kinds of money, that and money allows you to do things, right?
That's true.
Okay, so if I was to go then into how you then choose your career path.
Yes.
What did you, when you were growing up, what did you want to be?
Actually, when I was young, all these answers change based off my age. When I was young, I wanted to be a taxi driver. Why? Because I could drive cars all day. For me, it seemed like a fun thing. It changed then to a fireman. Why? The risk, the excitement of fire engines. As I grew a bit older, it dawned on me, I wanted to be somewhere where there's a bit of money. So at first, I thought I'd enter into the finance.
Why did you feel like you wanted to be somewhere where there's money? What was it about money that...
Money gives you freedom. And I think from a young age, you could see this. With money, you're able to travel. With money, you're able to get what you want. And it gets to a point where you start realizing the value of trading, the value of money, the value of that exchange, similar to you seeing that lady in the tax shop and saying, you know what, I want one of those hot dogs. I want one of those whatevers.
Right.
It shows you that there's an ability to have that freedom of buying whatever you want. So if you're in a source of a place which has a lot of money, by default, you'd be able to have that luxury of buying whatever you need.
Right.
I decided I'd want something in finance initially. And then I thought about it. Accountants would have too much. It's just literally just numbers all day. It's very monotonous, something that was not creative. Then the next best thing was being a businessman, entrepreneurship. So international business. And that was my first degree. Because I wanted to travel. I wanted to have the ability to travel. Yet at the same time, I wanted something that is exciting. I had done economics, business studies, and a lot of finance-related courses before then. And I felt that was my niche. From there, I fell in love with the subjects. I felt like this is something that makes more sense in terms of the money world, in terms of management, in terms of... I wanted to pursue a further degree, and that's how I ended up with the master's degree, business analytics and consulting. Little did I know this would be spreadsheets, like deepest theories ever.
Right.
So it was quite an interesting journey, but it gave me a lot of insight. It gave me that ability to think very quickly when it comes to whether it's financial statements, whether it's analysis. It just gave me that ability to analyze things very quickly. And
so you knew from a very young age, like you want to be in a place where there's money. You want to be, and for you, money meant freedom, money meant traveling, money meant doing what you want to do. Were you, at that point, I guess when you're thinking around these things, had you been exposed to those things?
Some of them, yes. Like from a very young age, my father was in a lot of travel. He used to work in the travel industry. So there's a bit of traveling here and there from a very young age. So it allowed me to see a bit of the world. I wanted to see a lot more of the world.
Okay.
So I guess that was also part of the inspiration in terms of even international business. Seeing the world and seeing how to manage across the world. So that was so I guess that's where you get that initial experience and you're like, this is I've had a taste of this, I want more of this. And did your parents in that sense, or your dad have any input in
helping you charter the path that you then did?
I think so. I think more than anything, he's been more of a motivation and inspiration.
Okay.
He's a very humble guy. He's a guy who's into a lot of saving. And he'll always tell you, like, look at the peak of that mountain and climb it slowly by slowly. You'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
He has a lot of stories that he tells you about his life and how he's been able to achieve momentous, or I don't know how to say it, huge goals, basically.
Right.
Yes.
Right. What was the thing that at that point? What was the thing that impressed you the most about what he had achieved?
Yeah.
That you were like, you know what? Yeah, this is an inspiration, and this is what I want to do. Whatever you can share on the podcast.
That's fair enough. It's
Yeah.
just that I'd have to think about it.
Yeah.
He's come from humble beginnings, but in terms of his dedication and
Yeah.
dedication to his craft, dedication to his goals, there's been a lot. One of the things that he's really inspired me with is just his craft and his dedication. I'll give you one of the few examples. In the Middle East, he was fortunate to have double-digit growth in the airline industry. In Tanzania, where he worked at some point, he also had double-digit growth.
And for this, he was working as an employee.
He was working as an employee.
Okay.
At the same time, he's invested here and there.
Okay.
But as an employee, this is what I valued most. The fact that you can achieve double digit in one of the hardest industries in the world.
Right.
They say in order to become a millionaire, you start out as a billionaire and you invest in an airline.
Okay.
He did the opposite. He made airlines grow. He initiated a lot of things with the cargos and several other things. So just in terms of understanding an industry, one of the hardest industries, and trying to make something out of it, it has really given me that inspiration.
Yeah.
Never give up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Sounds like quite the man. I mean,
fair enough. Yes.
Okay. So you decide that you want to be in a space with money.
Yes.
You then pursue business as theory in terms of understanding the elements that get into that process, right? So what happens then? Or rather, at this point in time, actually, while you're living in Warwick or Liverpool, or doing your before you do the second MBA,
yes,
your parents are supporting you at this point,
correct?
Right? Are you doing any other part-time jobs when you're in the UK? Or?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done it all. Talk about bartending. I've done that. Being in a restaurant as waiter. Yes. So they have a lot of these training facilities that they usually do. In Liverpool, there was Echo Arena. Echo Arena is like a huge conference hall. Yeah. It's near the docks. So they give you all this sort of training in terms of bar type of training, type of alcoholic beverages. So basically I was a waiter, I was a barman, and I did this. This was extra money that allowed me to also do a bit of travel here and there. And
how much are you being paid as a waiter or a bartender in the UK?
No, back then it wasn't a lot. It was like £5.50 an hour. Pounds.
And then you're doing, I'm assuming you're in the international visa, so you're doing a maximum of 20 hours a week.
That is correct.
So you're doing £100
yes,
a week, so that's £400 a month.
That's still not bad. That's like 40,000 shillings, but when you convert into, of course, the standard of living on that other side, it works out, I mean, you could spend, what, £3 on just a pint.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And what are you doing with that £400 at that point in time?
Yes.
Because I'm assuming so your what do you call it, the accommodation and all that is taken care of
all taken
by
care
the folks.
Yes.
So then you have this £400.
Yes.
What are you doing with that £400 at this time?
There's several things that I ended up doing. Now it's called Enactus. Back then it was called Saif.
Okay.
So basically it's a student enterprise that we used to work with a couple of friends. So some of it went to there. The rest of it went towards entertainment and travel.
Right.
Yes, and gadgets.
Right.
Yes. Right. That one, yes. I have learned my lesson since
was then. Was it majority? What had the majority?
I mean, honestly, it was the travel. It was the travel. I did some Euro trips with a few friends.
Right.
It was good. It's something that I can't regret because at the end of the day, it showed me different countries, different perspectives. It allowed me to bond with my friends. Yeah. And I think it's that time as a student where you start thinking, you know what, let me enjoy a little bit of life. Yeah. Yes.
As you make it happen. Okay, so you come back to Kenya.
Yes. Actually, I went back to Tanzania where my family was at the time.
So what are you doing now in Tanzania?
So in Tanzania, I started working for Citi Bank.
Okay.
But Citi Bank also had an international freeze, so it was a short-term contract. It was about 5 months contract.
Are you coming in entry level?
Yes, I was entry level, but I was on a contract. I think it was 5 or 6 months. But I was rigorously also looking for another job at the same time.
Okay.
So I ended up working for Tanzanian distilleries. So
Okay.
Tanzanian distilleries are the maker of konyagi,
Uh-huh.
which is a spirit that's very well known
Yes,
in
yes,
Kenya.
yes.
So I was a financial supernumerary for TDL.
Yeah.
So basically, I was working under the director. There was a director called Justin Gave,
Okay.
a South African. Unfortunately for me, as I entered the company, he's gone on experiential learning. They used to take the senior managers onto experiential learning, where they take them to different plants across the world as part of Sab Miller. So he went to Ecuador and another country. And that was for about a period of 2 months. The next best person was, guess what? An accountant. So literally bean keeping. I'm literally goods received notes,
Back to the thing
debit,
that you
credit
did not
notes.
want to do.
Something I definitely did not want to
Yeah.
do. So fortunately, at the same time, I also got a call back from KCB.
Okay. Before we get back to Kenya, so in
Yes.
Tanzania,
Yes.
what are you being paid in Tanzania? How much are you making in Tanzania?
Okay.
And how are you meeting your expenses? Are you still living at home at this point? Have
Yes.
you moved out?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was back again to living at home, and fortunately, the package was good. It was about $1,500 to $2,000.
Per month. At the
That
time.
was per month. at
This
the
was
time.
both at Citi Bank and the.
That was at Citi Bank, and then it was also at TDL. So
Okay.
TDL, of course, it had to be a bump. Yeah. So it was about 150.
Okay.
It was 1,000 to 150 to 1,500. Sorry.
dollars.
And then now 2,000 at TDL.
Okay.
Yes.
So what are you doing with that money?
Yes. Okay.
Is it still the same? Is it still the same entertainment
unfortunately,
investment ratio?
Unfortunately, yes. The only good thing which I can remember, which I did with that money, was investing in some shares. There was TBL shares, Tanzanian Breweries Limited shares, that I bought at the same time. There was Anglo Ashanti shares that I bought. The rest of it, I mean, I'm sorry. I was very young. I was very naive in terms of how the money works, in terms of the savings. So my saving ratio was not as high.
Yeah.
I remember buying my first car, which was a Toyota.
In Tanzania.
Yeah. It was a Toyota Volts.
Okay.
Toyota Volts. So that was also part of the savings that
you had
that I
you
got
had
from
accumulated.
Yes.
That's a really good package though for a like first second job. No, is that like
Citibank was a
extremely
very
fortunate?
good payer, and then now this TDL, because it was a financial supernumerary, it's like a management program, but to fast track. Yes. And now let me tell you the interesting bit.
Yeah.
So when I had applied, TDL and TBL are sister companies. They're part of Sab Miller.
Okay.
And they have about 75% market share. I was caught up in a situation where TBL had called me for an interview. TDL had also called me for an interview, but they were very smart about this. So the TBL interview was about procurement.
Okay.
Something I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
Literally Googling and trying to understand within
This
like 3
procurement
days.
process and all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
I got there. They were highly impressed. They also wanted to give me a contract. TDL also wanted to give me a contract, but as a supernumerary. But they were very smart about it. They were like, listen, you first choose which company you're going to go to. We're not going to have a tough war over ABCD.
Right.
So fortunately, that package was good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's extremely. That's I'm striking gold. Okay, so unfortunately, at the time, in money terms, you're still spending most of the money.
Yes.
Saving very little. However, even with the very little that you're saving or smaller percentage, you're able to buy the car.
Yes.
And then you come back to Kenya.
I come back.
Do you come with a car?
Yes, I came with a car, but it ended up also being very expensive because at the time, you had to go 3 months and then you go back to Namanga, you renew the permit, back again. Nowadays, I think it's a lot simpler because I see a lot of Tanzanian cars.
Plates,
I see a lot of South Sudan cars that are still here. Yeah. But back then, you had to go back to Namanga, renew.
And how much did it cost to renew the...
Do I remember? God.
We'll Google. We'll Google
yes,
and
we'll
find
Google
out.
that one.
Yeah. So come back to Kenya. What's happening then?
So I ended up, at first I tried also another Citi Bank application.
Yeah.
But I ended up also with with KCB. So KCB, I entered through the management program, which was leading now to the corporate relationship management.
Okay.
Something which I felt was a bit closer to my role.
Yeah.
Because in Tanzania, I mean, like it or not, at the time, I don't know whether things have changed as much. They also did not like Kenyans, and it was painfully obvious.
Right.
You come in with a mentality of trying to do a lot. Trying to get tasks done within a particular timeline. They also have their own timelines.
Right.
There's a thing about respecting age.
Right.
So you can't rush older generations. And it became very frustrating as well. At the same time, I'm being counting.
Right. You're not enjoying the process.
I was not enjoying the process. So when I came into banking was at least different. It was innovative. It's working at the branches initially to understand how the whole system works. Then of course now we went to head office. That's at Moi Avenue, Kencom.
And is there a point between Tanzania and Kenya where you're not working? Job hunting, so to speak?
To be honest, I think it was literally from one thing to
One
the other,
thing
and
to the next.
It was fast. It was
a
really
fast
pace.
Okay, so you get into KCB management program.
Yes.
Is the package at KCB as good as the Citi Bank one?
No. No, it wasn't.
Right.
And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
In Tanzania, they have this thing called the 12th check.
Okay.
12th check? It's called the 13th check.
Okay.
Basically, you got a 13th check with Citibank. You got a 13th. I wasn't there long enough because that was about 5 to 6 months with Citibank. TDL, they also had the 13th check, something which I discounted in my mind. So I enter this banking system thinking, okay, you know what? We're going to start somewhere. It's a bit lower, but we're going to climb and we're going to see where that goes.
Yeah.
There's no 13th
There's
check.
no 13th check.
There's
that
no
came
13th check.
And
also in terms of matching, it
Yeah.
was slightly lower.
Yeah.
I remember it being lower. I think it was about maybe 120, 130,000.
1,000 Kenya shillings at the time. So if that's 130 gross, you're doing, you tax that, you're doing, so it's about 100,000,
There you
maybe,
go.
maybe just a little under.
Yes.
Okay, so at this point, has your family moved back, or you've left your family in Tanzania?
No, my family's still well in Tanzania.
So you're now
dad
here
is-
living on your own?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So how are you meeting your cost? Where are you staying? How are you meeting your cost?
Excellent. Good question. So I stayed in Langata. That was my first accommodation.
Okay.
And again, I just had to deal with the costs. There was some money that I put up. There was also some money that, again, family assisted with.
Yeah.
For furniture and a few other things.
Right.
As a startup. But that's how it's managing. The car from Tanzania.
Yeah.
Fueling it, there's still expenses. So in a way, that was also good for me because it thrust me into understanding now how to budget.
Yes.
And how to budget accordingly. Because if you don't do it, there's no safety net.
Yes.
As it should be.
Yes.
That's how life is.
Yeah.
And
Was that your first real? I mean, from the fact that you had, but in Tanzania you were at home and essentially all this money you were making was yours.
Yeah.
Is this like your first real experience of
Yes.
budgeting and being like, oh, if I don't use my money accordingly,
Yes.
I'm going to be in trouble?
So I'll be honest with you. Uni, yes, but uni there's a safety net. Accommodation is being paid for. Food in that accommodation is already catered for.
Yeah.
Again, when you move out of hostels and what have you, of course, there's that element of budgeting, but it's such an insignificant portion of your life.
Yeah.
When you're out here is when you start realizing the good thing about banking is that they will overwork you. So as they overwork you, that means you don't have a lot of distractions. You don't have a lot of time. So by default, you end up also making a lot of savings. And I think
So you didn't have as much time. What saved, well, potentially could have saved
Yeah.
you was you didn't have as much time to have as much entertainment as you had before.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But again, as you grow older, there's also that sense of discipline that comes across that. Yes, you got to put some money aside. You've got to do A, B, C, D.
Right.
The good thing with banking as well, they have a lot of lectures, a lot of packages as well in terms of where you can invest in land, other things. So
Are you doing any of those investments at this time when you're at KCB?
Yes. So the only one which I can remember that's significant would be Kisaju. There's several plots. There's some that I bought with friends. There's some individuals. What else have I done with that? Yeah.
And maybe on that, on the banking packages, because I've heard this as well from, I guess, multiple people who I've talked to who work in banks. How attractive are the interest rates and those kinds of things vis-a-vis if you're not in the bank?
That's one of the things I miss about banking.
Yeah.
So back when I entered banking, the interest rates were as high as 24%.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Back then you could get as low as I think it was about 7 to 10% depending on your ranking.
Right.
What's even better is for people who work with KRA, 4% across the board. 4% interest rates
Across the board.
Yes. So whether it's a mortgage, whether it's a vehicle, whether it's whatever, 4%, and that's a very good package.
Okay, so then how do you leave the banking industry then? What happens when you leave the banking
when
industry?
you leave the banking industry, the rates revert up to the market rate, but they give you about a year. So within the first year, you're still under that banking rate as a bank employee, but past that, balloons and shoots up. The good thing about this is I didn't have a lot of liabilities. I didn't take on board as much as I could have. I mean, in hindsight,
you could have. So at this point, let me get this. So at this point, you have no loans you've taken.
Yes.
All the money that you've invested is purely from capital that you have earned.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you have a couple of investments through the KCB.
The
schemes that they have. And you're on very good interest rates, and then you leave the banking industry.
Yes.
Why and how did you leave the banking industry?
Excellent. Good question. So my idea was to climb the corporate ladder, to keep going from job to job.
And at this point, is it still money based? Is it still I want to become the CEO of XX organization because I'll be able to make the most money?
So there's this disillusionment that happens. So again, coming from whether Citi Bank, whether abroad, and having that education, there's always this over-optimism about, yes, I can conquer the world. I can be whatever I want to be. And then reality starts to check in. So you look at things, even in treasury, there's only 15 key treasury people or people who are treasurers who work within treasury. And that's the highest paying amongst the different departmental units apart from senior management.
Right.
You look at that, there are 15 people who've been working there for about 5 to 10 years. It dawns on you that the chances that you would ever go into that group, it's limited. And on top of that, if you want to be a senior treasurer, again, it's still limited. You have all these people fighting for that top spot. The same thing with corporate where I was. So I was in large corporates. I was handling the second largest portfolio in the whole entire department. And I'm looking through at the head of department. There's about 20 to 30 people, all gunning for this spot. All these people have about 15 years ahead of you in terms of experience. It starts to dawn on you, how likely is it that you're going to just shoot up and climb unless you're extremely extraordinary? That being said, I still wanted to climb that corporate route. The way I knew how, and as most bankers do, is from swapping from one bank to the other.
Right.
So there were 2 banks that I had interest in, and I had already pushed my papers as well. This is 3 years into KCB.
And at this point, you're a head of department.
I'm not a head of
department.
No,
not yet.
No. Oh, no.
Okay, sorry.
Corporate banker.
So let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
How much is a head of department making?
Okay. So a head of department at that time, I think, was 400 to 500. And then a departmental head would be $1 million plus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a head of corporate would be like $1 million plus. Head of that department would be maybe 500.
Okay. Thereabout. Okay. All right. And a head of department, you're saying this guy has been in the industry for 15 years.
Yes. In fact, all these senior bankers that you're seeing have been in that department for 15 years. So you're looking at this and you're thinking, you've just entered, even if it's your 3rd year, how long are you going to stay here before moving on to the next step? And then the next step. It's like a very long chain. So what most bankers usually do, they swap. They move to another bank at a higher rate. They're brought back in at a higher rate. And they keep doing the hop until they're somewhere.
Right.
And I still know friends to date who have done this. And that's the only way they've
been able to
move.
But like moving through one company through the chain.
It is difficult, especially in banking. They will take you for granted. What do you know? Or even if you've done another degree, what do you know?
Yeah.
You're still the same person. You will still give us the same work ethic. In fact, I will add to you more responsibilities.
But not increase your pay.
Growth. Thank you. Not pay, not growth.
Gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
At this point, of course, reality had also hit in terms of like, it's not always just about the money. It's about also what you can do externally. The discussions and conversations you have with older peers, they start teaching you that, look, if you want to make it in life or if you want to achieve your goals, you got to do more than just
The
rely
9
on
to
a
5,
job. The
right.
9 to 5 will never be enough.
Yeah.
And that's something, ironically, that my father has always said. So it made a lot of sense. Here I am, still a corporate banker, thinking about moving to, there were two options in terms of banking. And fortunately, this was also a time when I had a conversation with my father. This is how I ended up on the family business role.
Okay.
So being somebody who's extremely focused and serious in terms of what I want to do and structure, we had this conversation where he was like, so son, I have climbed through the corporate ranks. I have invested A, B, C, D. You want to do the exact same so that you do the same. Why not help me grow wherever I am and whatever I've invested in into the next level? And we had a candid conversation about this, and I started thinking it makes sense. At the end of the day, if anything happens to you, whether you're sick, whether you pass on, God forbid, they'll replace you the next day. There's no remorse about this. But growing something that has your name,
right.
it's something where you can add value to something.
Yeah.
So we talked about the terms, conditions. It was
Before you get into the terms of conditions,
Yes.
question, I want to ask, if you could just give us like a brief history of
Yeah.
how did the family company even come
Start.
to be? Yeah, how did it start?
Excellent. So he had been investing a lot, even from days where he was working with other companies. He had been investing a lot back home. So amongst them was a drilling company, which has grown over time.
And by investing, do you mean buying shares? Do you mean?
Oh no, from scratch.
From scratch, like he's built the
it.
company.
It's literally importing the machinery, importing. In fact, there were even personnel that were imported initially, and then our people got to learn, and then eventually.
And through his salary, he's paying
Yes.
all the costs. He's paying the people who are running the company.
Correct.
All of that. Okay. Great.
Correct. There were some that my grandfather used to run, but again now he started now establishing some others.
All right.
And I think that's how some of the I want to say enterprises or businesses started to grow. Yes, but it was also structured not in. I would say it wasn't an efficient way of organizing things. When you look at sales, there were things that were being done in terms of referrals. You'd have like a few salespeople, maybe 3. And then now you'd rely a lot on referrals. Yet the demand was so much, there needed to be a lot more visibility, more DSRs. So when we started talking about the issues that the companies were facing, it became clear that there are solutions. But
And at that point, how many companies are there?
okay, so there's a few, but the ones which I was involved in was the drilling company initially, and the clearing forwarding. The hospitality arm of things started as I was entering the first year of the drilling.
Okay.
So purely it was number one, drilling. So how to change things, how to gain market visibility, things to do with operations, how can we be more efficient, how are the crews working. Anyways, we did that. There was a bit of savings and accumulation of capital from there. And then that is how we started the first hotel. That's now the Gelian Hotel, part of the Gelian Investment Ltd. We're fortunate that the standards were set to a 4-star level and we were certified as the same. So just to give you a brief background in terms of how I entered now from the drilling into now hospitality. There was now one of the directors, Director Beatrice Makawiti. She was a former KICC MD. She was a former Dean of Utali. So she has a huge degree in terms of hospitality. She's worked in France and several other places in terms of her experience. So she knows in terms of what is expected in a 4-star establishment. So we sat down and we decided I would work hand in hand with her. We'd work with the projects team as well in terms of how the design would look, the functionality of a lot of things. Then from there, that's how Gelian got to be. We took his vision and we we somehow made it a reality. And I think we've not done a bad job when you look at it. And it's
how many hotels are there now?
So now there are 2 hotels. We've just finished the second one last year January, and now it's a year into operation, and we thank God it's picking up very well. It's called Semara Hotel. It's about 1.2 kilometers away from Gelian. We're also looking in the next 3 years. There are plans of other expansions. So yeah.
Okay. Let me bring you back to the conversation you're having with your dad about coming in and working in the family company. How difficult is it to have a conversation about money and remuneration at that point?
It's extremely difficult. First of all, I mean, this is your father. The fact that you're being exposed, he didn't know how much I was earning at ABCD, all these other companies. Now you have to sit down and actually have a discussion in terms of these are the expectations. The good thing about it is he's also very rational about it. When you look at market value and you look at the type of duties and you're basing it based off the duty, it becomes a lot easier. The question comes in, how much would you pay somebody for X, Y, Z? These type of duties. Then it becomes clear, if you're going to pay this amount, then why don't we factor it into the duties that I will be having? Other things like health, medical insurance, those things were important to me. I think they've been part of the package. They've been part of the senior management packages as well. I think from there, once we made it very objective in terms of the duties and how much those duties would be in terms of market value, it became more transparent.
So there was no like, you're my son, and because of that, I'm going to give you, X amount. Or there was no.
I wish.
Or there was no you taking a hometown discount and being like, because a family company, I'll be willing to take a little bit less than what I naturally would want.
Fair enough. I think that's a very good way of putting it. I don't think we've reached that point of having a discount.
Okay.
In fact, what I've gotten to learn is that you work a lot harder working for a family business than you would in another. You're capped with other hours. Maybe you're doing a 9 to 5. That's a 9 to 5. This one, you go home, you start thinking about solutions. There's a lot of people that rely on you. So when you start thinking about all this, naturally you just start giving away more time. Yeah.
Okay. And so what kind of, I'm assuming you got an increment when you are then moving. So what kind of increment in terms of percentages are you talking about when you move, when you are now coming over to the family company?
So we talked about where would I be maybe in a year's time as well. What are my duties? What are my roles? And then from there we based a figure, but we didn't have a percentage as such. So it was more of, this is fair market value for what you will be doing. The main thing that really mattered for me was the structure. So you need me to be in here? Yes, fair enough. This is what I'll need. After that discussion was had. But more so, what are the duties and responsibilities? There's nothing worse than just being put somewhere just because it's a family business. Just sit there. No, you're wasting your potential.
So you felt like you had the qualifications for the job that you were being given.
Oh, more than qualified. I mean, number one, we've talked about the 3 degrees. Number 2, we've talked about the fact that, yes, I've come from a financial background. I've come from, business analytics, management as well background. I'm able to deliver a lot, even in terms of before I jumped on board. I knew particularly the different things that I could bring on board in terms of just the management skills. When it came to the hospitality side of things, which would come a year later, I knew, yes, it's a new field, but I have that quick ability to learn and absorb things quickly. I guarantee you right now, he got a discount. He got a discount.
Let me ask you this, right? Yes. So when you're at KCB or the banking space, you're looking at the heads of departments. They are making give or take 500,000 a month, right? And that's going to take you 10-15 years to be able to get there. If at all, I'm assuming it did, how much shorter did you making this transfer make that journey for you?
I'd say it did without going into figures.
Yes,
it did. But at the same time, it was also about that commitment and dedication. When you look at the growth that the companies have had, it's been phenomenal, and we thank God for it. But there's also been a lot of effort that goes behind the scenes, a lot of planning, a lot of thinking, and trying to restructure a lot of different things. So
but essentially it did make it shorter.
It made it shorter. Yes.
And what then are you doing with your money at that point? I guess now you moved, you've gotten a different package. So what are you doing with your money?
Absolutely, and very good question at that. I think I learned from my mistakes, and I think also having that timeline of working and not having enough free or idle time gives you a bit of savings. So I've invested in some bowsers, particularly in that Machakos region where we have the hotel.
By invested in bowsers, you mean you bought?
I bought.
You bought bowsers.
I bought. It just makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of piped water. It's quite something. I also went into farming.
Okay.
So I was doing a lot of French beans, chilies, and other vegetables for export. There was an export company that I was working with. What else did I do? I've done a lot of things.
Okay, so I want to break it down like this. At this point in time, again, without particularly going into figures, so you have your salary, you have the Bowser company,
correct,
you're farming, what percentages are these contributing to your overall income?
Okay, so initially, I would say maybe there were 20 to 25.
Each or both put together?
I mean, when you put everything together, I'd say about 25%. 25% would be a good figure that they brought
so your monthly income at 100% is salary plus everything. So you're saying your salary is bringing in 75% of your income.
Yes.
And then the Bowsers and whatever the investments you're making are giving you 25% of your income.
Yes. Okay. And that was initially. Because as I started to learn more, as I started to also grow with the Bowsers, because again, it was kubahatisha. It's literally, you have got this thing, you've got a driver, you're getting orders from XYZ. So within the first year, you don't expect to just expound. But with time, I started to get to know how things were working. I ended up buying also another Bowser and several. I think now they're back to 3, but 1 is problematic.
And is it with the Bowsers? Are you doing that like I guess the way Matatus or Ubers do, where it's like I have a driver and someone I'm telling me I just need X amount a day?
No. No. And I think that works very well for Matatus, but very poor for Bowsers. So what I do is I monitor where is it delivering, because at the end of the day, there's plots which have raised tanks, which the Bowsers now use. So again, that's also a cost. So we can't leave him to collect unlimited amounts of water and then start now selling his own. So I have a system where I decide this is his salary, but past a certain amount, I'm going to top up a bonus. There's a bonus system. So that somehow keeps him motivated, so that his incentive is in selling a lot more. The other thing about Matatus is you have that ability to have many routes, many routes as possible. You can squeeze in as many people. With a Bowser, you can only fill in 10,000 liters of water
at a time.
And it also takes time to deliver from one place to the other. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's about that. What about the farming? How's the farming going? Because I hear that can go...
It can go either way.
It can go either way.
It can go either way. The good thing is we have drip irrigation, which we also give as one of our solutions for Almac. So it's all dripped. So it's about 30 acres, but I farmed about 5 acres. So it was the French beans, the bullet chilies, and some other vegetables that were there.
Yeah. And are you exporting those?
So I'm not exporting directly, but I was selling to an export company that has an export license.
Okay.
Yes. So basically, past 45 days, I get some ladies that are ferried with a matatu. They come in, they're pickers, they collect, they put onto these racks, and then now the company comes to collect. They pay me after, I think it's about a week or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much did it cost you to buy the first Bowser?
The first Bowser was, I bought it from a transport company that's owned by a family friend, but it was about 1.5.
1.5. How much did it cost to make to begin the farming, the farming investment essentially? That
was 600,000 for the drip irrigation, the chimbing, the digging of certain tunnels in between. Storage was maybe around another 75,000 thereabouts. Okay. So maybe 700 to 750 thereabouts.
So essentially to do both of those investments, you need at least 2.2 million saved income, which you can then spread out.
Yes.
And how long did it take for the Bowser to pay for itself?
Oof. So the good thing about Bowsers, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of water within the eastern region.
Right.
So it started picking up a lot of traction. I would say within 1 year and 2 months thereabouts, it had already paid itself back.
Okay.
Yeah.
The farming?
The farming was relatively quick, but I'd give it about 6 months.
Yeah.
6 months,
before you
because
made
that
back.
was 2 loads, and 2 loads of the French beans. No, it was about 3. Yeah, it was about 6 months or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are two. Is there any other investment at this point that you're making?
Yes. Though I will not go public
You'll-
with some of
Okay.
But
Yeah.
the good thing about all of this is it teaches you. It teaches you when you start seeing money coming back in.
Yeah.
It's like money that you can hold, do something else
Yeah.
with it immediately. Yes. It also gave me a bit of freedom because I had also missed, again, traveling.
Yes.
So
yeah.
still in between my years, I have still traveled and here and there.
Done that.
Yeah.
Okay. A question based off of your dad's philosophy, I guess, when he was getting you to come into the family company and saying, look, instead of building something else out there, why don't you come here and help build me? I'm curious to know what his feeling was towards these investments that you were making.
Yes.
Because I'm sure it was taking your time to some degree. It may not have taken all your time, but I'm sure it's taking your time. And then
Yes.
also how you reconciled saying, I want to do this for myself. Like, yeah, I've been brought in to build a family company, but
Yes.
even outside the family company, I want to have my own thing.
Well, one of the things that he's always said is that salary will never be enough.
Yeah.
So he was encouraged by some of the ventures. Others he wasn't so pleased about.
Yeah.
I'll mention just one of them. There's a liquor store and a shop in Naivasha that he was not too happy about because he felt that distance and that traveling in between would take a lot. It would take a lot.
Yeah.
Other ventures, because I've ended up also in the bar business. Mzuzi Park. There's a bar and restaurant we set up. And several others as well. He was okay with that because as long as it's not taking predominantly all my time and I'm able to manage the time between the family business and these other ventures, he was very okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that sense, like it wasn't an issue at all.
It wasn't an issue then.
Right.
It
Okay.
wasn't an issue then.
I have an interesting question for you, and I don't know whether it'll make you uncomfortable or not, but
No,
we'll
go right
see.
ahead.
We'll see whether you'll answer it.
Yeah.
I have this thing I talk about with my brother every so often, and you know how they come up with Forbes list 30 under 30.
Yeah.
And there's this running joke that usually says there should be another Forbes lists that should be created that's like for people who build things from scratch vis-a-vis
Yes.
people who
That is
were
true.
born into a privileged space, right, and had the ability to just be able to do stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like I think. And I hope I don't get this wrong. I'm not even going to say his
No,
name,
go right
but I
ahead.
know. Oh, yes, Donald Trump is the person who says that his father gave him a small loan of
a million dollars.
a small loan of $1 million, right? So my question to you is, because clearly, I mean, whether it's not been explicit, but clearly you are born in a space of privilege to some degree,
Yeah, fair
and so my question there is. And I'm not taking away anything from the investments and the
enough.
things that you have done because
Yeah.
it still does take
Effort.
work and effort and to make that happen. But would you attribute an element of being able to have the investments and all of those things to the fact that I was born in a pretty comfortable space, and with that I have done what I've been able to do?
Well, fair enough. I think I would relate this to the story about the talents.
Okay.
Where
In the Bible.
Where a master left somebody with 5, somebody with 2, and somebody with 1. And then the one with 1 just decided, you know what, this is too small. I'm not going to do anything. I'll just bury it and give it to the master when he's back. Again, it's unfortunate, but some people could be born with all the money in the world, and yet they don't make any use of this. I would attribute more so the teachings that my father has given me, more than anything in terms of the education, the privileged background that we're talking about. I would talk about the values that he's instilled in me in terms of me seeing the hard work, me seeing the risk-taking entrepreneurial ability. That's what has given me that inspiration to actually do something and to try and make something of myself. at the end of the day, we have to have a balanced view in terms of this. If I had not gone maybe to a good school, would my thinking be the same? If I hadn't done business analytics and consulting, would I have ended up in banking? Would I have had the fortune of knowing what I know, which I've transferred into the family business? I think it's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. Without it, I can't tell whether I would have ended up where I am.
Yeah.
And with it, yes.
Do you, as you analyze it, do you think you could have done more? Like if you're to look at it now and you're like, I could be further, or I could have generated more than I have at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's one thing that always lives in the back of my mind. What can I do better? And this is now a question that I ask myself every so often. Can I do better? What have I done? Every single year, at the start of the first quarter, I always look at what can I do this year that can be better than other years. When you look back, I mean, you could always do better. You could always have made investments in particular areas that have blown up. But you've made your decision. There's no such thing as regrets. You've lived your journey, and for one reason or the other, it's been beneficial in one way or the other. So I have no regrets about it. But yes, I feel I could have always done better. And you always can do better.
Yeah. So if now we're to work back and go to the how old were you? Teenage Tony, who was like, I want to be in a space that has lots of money. I want to work in a space that has lots of money. I want that freedom. Do you think that you have then achieved that? Or do you feel like you're on the journey to achieving that?
I would say my principles are different. I would no longer look at the young, naive Tony saying, look, you want to be Donald Trump. No. I'd look at it like there's more to life. And you've got to enjoy the journey. You've got to enjoy the process. Even when you're building certain businesses, you're enjoying the complexity in terms of trying to make something work. It's not easy dealing with people. It's not easy dealing with finances. But the minute you start enjoying the journey is the minute that things, for one reason or the other, start clicking. Yeah.
Maybe, I guess as we're sort of wrapping up, a question. Is it greener on the other side? And what I mean by that is, again, based on the privilege side of things of there may not be certain things that may be at the back of your mind and you're not thinking about black tax necessarily or any of those things. In terms of the challenges that then you go through or that you faced, do you feel like, it's still a little easier than what I guess the average Mwananchi would go through?
No, absolutely. I'm very fortunate and I'm very grateful for the life that I have. Yes, and I understand there's huge dimensions in terms of the black tax and how much it takes away from your ability to actually execute what you aim to achieve. So in terms of that aspect, I don't have so much of black tax. And that is a very good thing because it allows me to do a lot more in terms of whatever my dreams are, instead of sacrificing my dreams for the benefit of others. That being said, I feel that as a citizen, we have responsibilities of giving back to the communities. Even though the black tax might be lessened, we have to somehow give back, whether through mentorship, whether through raising awareness, even through just employees and seeing how to better their lives. That's something that I fundamentally believe, and that's something that I'm trying to push within my life.
Okay. Second last question. So how many what does your portfolio look like right now in terms of investments that you've made outside of the primary job that you work?
Wow. Okay. So I just
with the ones that you can the ones that you can
I'd give the industry. So I'm in retail. I'm a lot of water distribution, education. There's the hospitality, clearing and forwarding. What else? There was a bit of insurance, but we'll see how that goes. I think those are the main ones, and then now entertainment, and I guess you'd call that entertainment and bars.
In our Kenyan context, which one brings in the most returns?
Wow.
In terms of percentages.
Okay.
We can talk about percentages, like which ones brings in the most return.
I'm just thinking now with social media
Yes.
and certain agencies having access, that might not be in my best interest.
Just to answer that question.
To answer that question.
Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough. I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough.
In your money journey, last thing, I guess, in your money journey, what's a lesson, I guess, that you've learned? Or not even a lesson. Actually, let me talk about a regret, because I guess the lessons they may be doing. What's a regret that you've heard?
In fact, let me give you both. Let me give you both. One regret is just starting earlier. Take that risk. Start that shop. Start doing something apart from your 9 to 5. That is one thing that I wish I had done sooner. The minute you start is the minute you start learning. It's the minute you start growing. It's the minute you start acquiring and you start learning real life lessons. There's certain things that people cannot teach you. You've just got to experience it. That is my biggest regret, not starting earlier.
Okay.
What was your other
lesson?
Lesson.
Yeah.
My biggest lesson would be it's not always about the money. The money will be there, but you've got to have that passion. And I think it's a cliche when people say, do what you enjoy doing. Live your passion. But I feel strongly, because I've seen it in experience, the minute you start living that passion, you start delivering. And automatically all these other things start coming back. But unless you have that passion, that drive,
it's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
Last thing.
Yes.
What does, with all the lessons that you've learned now and the different things that you've been able to achieve and look at, what does, and your mindset shift from, you know, I'll be the richest person in the world to whatever it is now, what does success look like for you with where you're at right now? With the different, what does financial success look like for you?
Financial success, it's actually a very interesting question. I've thought about success, but financial success, I guess it's one where you don't have to try so hard. You can live your passions, you can have your joy, but in terms of trying that hard, you don't have to. You do things because you want to do them, not because you ought to do them. When I think back on my career and my professions, I had to do some of the things. I had to do banking to survive. I had to be at TDL to survive. When you have financial freedom, it's a bit more relaxed. You choose what to do, whether it's a venture, whether it's a project.
So you feel like right now you still have to work.
I'm still young. I haven't reached any of my goals. My goals might be either audacious or I have to, but I enjoy what I'm doing. That's a major difference. Okay. I enjoy what I do, and yeah.
Okay, so financial success in this context would mean that you get to a point where you don't have to get in the office anymore.
That is it. You have people that are there to handle everything. This being Kenya, unfortunately, until you're 80, 90, you will have to cross-check everything. Trust but verify. That's another big lesson. Always trust but verify. Yeah. There's stories, and I don't know whether we talk about this offline. There's stories of being conned by employees multiple times. That has taught me that lesson, but I don't know whether you want to cover it or we just leave it.
No, if you want to talk about it, if there's an example there, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the biggest lessons is, again, trust but verify. In as much as you have structures, you have systems, and you have people doing things, always ensure that it goes back to you. You understand everything that is happening within the company, and I mean everything. We have had people stuffing beer bottles underneath tables to sell extra, just so that they could pocket some few. We've had people registering company names so that they can siphon from other companies. It's ridiculous. I'd say one of the hardest challenges of my job is not stopping people from stealing. It's reducing the amount that people steal. Pilferage. So people will always steal. But mine is making sure that it is as difficult as possible and it is as minimum as possible. Yeah. Yes.
So you have an allowance for pilferage, nobody lose X amount.
Nobody wants to lose X amount. Yeah. But even insurance companies have provisions. Banks have provisions for bad debts. There's a reason they do this, because they're aware that in as much as we assume everything in society works, there's a significant portion that doesn't work.
But what impact does that have on you as the ostentatious owner? I mean, someone stuffing beer bottles vis-a-vis X million you've put in the business. So what impact does that really have on you at the end of the day?
First of all, not only is it disrespect towards the other employees, because this is the money that feeds them, and it feeds several families.
Yeah.
You have to stop thinking about it as though it's just a business owner. When you look at all these companies, it is about the cycle that goes from all these people back to their families. And when you get to have a one-on-one and you have a true understanding of how much the job impacts on them. So now imagine you're making losses because of such things. You have to lay off people. That means they cannot feed their families. That again is a disservice you can't allow. At the end of the day, it's also pilferage. In as much as it's not your product, they're working for you. They're using company time. They're stealing. If there's another lesson that I'd give, it's always chop off any rotten head. The minute there's something that is wrong, please let that employee go. Doesn't matter. They've worked for you for how many years? Why? Because just like rot, it starts spreading. Oh, such and such is a sacred cow. You see, they can't be touched. And soon cartels start forming. So the minute you have a no-nonsense policy, it makes things a lot better.
Yeah.
People know that there's a working system. And believe it or not, it's a motivation for people to see that there's a system that works, that you're fair and just as an employer.
Yeah.
It's not that some people are doing ABCD, they're allowed to go. You see somebody else, ABCD. So it's fair across the board. Rules apply for everyone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I think this is the last thing that we'd say to every guest we've had. The journey that you've taken. Do you think that it's been worth it, or is there something more impactful potentially that you could have done that would have given you more satisfaction? Maybe healing people as a doctor, or providing legal advice to people. Is there something that you feel would have given you more impact, or do you feel like it was worth it? The journey and the path you took was it?
It's a very good question. I've thought back, and in terms of even what can I do better, I've thought about it. And I'm very happy with the journey. And the reason why I'm very happy with the journey is I look back. My metric for success when I was younger was very different from what it is now. When I look at the faces of my employees, when I look at the fact that they feel like it is a good place to work, when I enter the office and I know there's a working system, and I know what visions and plans that we have for the future, it makes me extremely satisfied and happy. It's just being in a place where everybody feels the unity, everybody feels the culture. And it's taken a while to create that, but we've gotten somewhere where I feel like our employees are very proud to have worked for us. Even former employees, I speak to them on the streets, I speak to them in other establishments, and I'm extremely happy. We always add value to people. And for me, it brings me great joy to say that. So
that so it's worth it for you.
It's worth it.
Okay. That was Tony on Financially Incorrect. I think I learned a lot. I think there's multiple things to sort of try and reflect on, and we will see you guys on the next episode.